What else stood out from that interview you had with Coach Mullen?
Yeah, Greeny, there was so much, but I think one of the things that's really interesting is that the University of Florida right now, from a football standpoint, seems to be taking their key from the state itself for how they're going to manage all of this. And in fact, Dan Mullen mentioned a couple of weeks' time when he thinks that they may even be able to open up their weight room. A lot of that has to do with the fact that in the state of Florida, they may be opening gyms in a couple of weeks. And so a weight room at a university would be considered like a gym. And the way that he phrased it is that they feel like their guys are going to be going out and working out anyway in some of these gyms. They would rather have them on campus at their gym, their workout facility, where they can monitor things and try to practice as much safety as possible, keeping things clean, keeping people social distanced, only allowing 10 people in a weight room at one time. And this is just all going to be very fluid, but when he said a couple of weeks, that really caught my attention. That's a lot sooner than some other places are talking about. And I think that's a big part of this. Another thing that stuck out to me is he said what they have dealt with, they've actually sent some tests out and been able to test some of their players who thought they might have been exposed to COVID and have not had any positive tests come back, but they have been able to secure some tests. And I do think that that's happening around the country as well. Some of that, he said too, is just dealing with the mental health of their players and coaches throughout this time, trying to keep them as positive as possible.
So, Paul, we keep hearing from different coaches and different administrators with a variety of different thoughts. What would you say is your one biggest takeaway from all of this?
This is going to be survival of the fittest. This is a brutal game, Greeny, and if you can play, you play. If you don't, you get run over and left behind. It does set up for a roller coaster ride of a college football season. And there are many skeptics that wonder exactly what it's going to look like at the end, but coaches like Dan Mullen and almost every coach and athletic director and commissioner that we have spoken to has the same feeling. We are going to play, and the real reason they're going to play is not because they enjoy college football, because they can't afford not to. The universities could start bleeding, and these athletic departments will be underwater without college football.
Danny, I feel like I haven't had a chance to ask you about this piece of it. You've heard all of this discussion, obviously, that we've been having in other places. What are your thoughts on some schools playing and others not?
I'm okay with it. You know, like I've said this, Greeny, this is not a greed thing. This is a necessity thing. And there's a lot of these schools that provide a massive amount of income to not only their institutions, football-wise, but all their sports programming-wise. And I think the reality is, from everything we know about what's happening, some spots of our country have not been as affected by what's going on as others when it comes to numbers. And so if a school or a conference says, overall, we haven't been as impacted negatively as certain areas, and we feel that we've got the parameters in place to allow us to do this, then I don't know if there's anything that can stand in their way, because the alternative is a massive amount of revenue lost that is going to hinder, again, tens of thousands of families being able to go to college on scholarship without it.
And so, Laura, again, we talked to the coaches and we talked to the administrators. We hear from the conference commissioners. Ultimately, who's going to make these choices? I mean, it sounds like Dan Mullen is telling you, yeah, I'm bringing my players back in 2 weeks. Is there anyone in charge in a bigger sense here?
Right. It seems like there's not. And that's why I think Paul's point is really important here, where everybody's just sort of making their own decision for their each individual school. I mean, Dan Mullen said, look, if we can bring our players back and we can play football, we're going to alter the schedule to find other teams that can also play. One thing that's interesting, too, the University of Florida has said that they will make a decision about the fall semester sometime in July. So we're talking about the potential of them trying to play football without students on campus, at least in the traditional matter, which Mark Emmert has already said from the NCAA standpoint may not be what he wants to see. So I don't know who's in charge here.
Paul, quickly, give me a final thought here. I mean, the commissioners ultimately will have to have some say in this. Dan Mullen can't make up his own schedule. So who ultimately steps in and says, all right, here's what we're going to do?
It's going to come down to the 5 Power 5 commissioners, Greeny. Those are the men who will sit at the table and decide. And one thing very interesting about it, there's already scrambling going on. Alabama plays Southern Cal in the first game of the season at Jerry's World. There's already talk going on between Alabama and TCU about meeting instead of the other two, because TCU plays at Berkeley, and the California schools, they do not believe will be available for that date.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.